Welcome to this edition of At the Mic. I'm your host, Keith Malinak. This week I sit down with Brad Skistimas, but you may know him as 5 Times August. Our conversation is next. First, let's talk about the holidays. Are you ready? Do you have the right coffee on hand for those special moments with family and friends? Well, if you don't, you need to get to it. Stop waiting around. American Pride Roasters coffee needs to be in your pantry right now, especially the pumpkin spice specialty coffee. That's the first Thanksgiving blend. After you've consumed the roughly 4,500 calories that most Americans put down over Thanksgiving Day, you'll probably want to unwind and just relax. Well, the perfect coffee for such an occasion is none other than APR Coffee's first Thanksgiving blend with its absolutely perfect pumpkin spice flavor, available at aprcoffee.com. And when you get ready to check out, be sure to use promo code ATM, that stands for At the Mic. That's going to get you 10% off your entire purchase. That's the first Thanksgiving blend available at aprcoffee.com.
You're listening to At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production.
Brad Skistimas, better known as musical artist 5 Times August, is my guest this week. Brad has been successful in the world of music making, and he continues to use his talents to churn out songs with messages for the interesting times we're living in today. Brad was born and raised in North Texas, where he remains today, and he came into the studio here in Dallas for this week's chat. Joined today here in studio with, now you knew this was going to be a thing. you knew this was going to be a thing. With Brad Skistimas.
Come on.
Hold on a second. You know what I should do? I should look at your name while I'm saying it, but it's not.
There you go. Cheat sheet. Skistimas.
Skistimas.
There you go. You got
Skistimas. That had to have been a challenge your entire life, not just with people like me.
Oh yeah. Every day roll call at school.
Yeah.
Skistimas.
I thought I had it bad with Malinak.
Yeah.
Skistimas.
It's
really, our last names aren't that difficult to pronounce if you just stop, take a breath, look at it, and read it.
Right.
But so many times I get calls on the phone where you can tell they don't know. You can tell it's a sales thing or some sort of spam call where it's like, yes, Keith Malikna.
Right. And they skip a letter or something and they'll mess it up.
Are you looking at the word?
Yeah.
Come on. So, anyhow, so brothers in last names, I guess. Struggles.
Absolutely. It's a real thing.
Yeah. So you were born and raised right here in the Dallas Metroplex.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool because not many people can say that.
Yeah.
That's kind of like how I feel, with Atlanta. When you hear somebody, that's where I was born and raised, say they're born and raised in Atlanta and they're still there. You're like, wow, you're a unicorn.
Right.
Because Dallas is a town that everyone's flocked to. And I'm sure you've seen that in your lifetime.
Yeah, I grew up here, and I used to think, like, one day I'm going to get out of this place. And I'll being in music, you're like, I'm going to go to New York or California, or I got to be where the industry is. I lived in Nashville for like 6 months, and I thought, like, okay, this is pretty close to, Texas vibes. But ultimately, after touring the country, I'm like, I think I'll be here the rest of my life. Texas is the right pace for me. It's you got space, it feels good. So yeah.
And if people aren't familiar, and correct me if I don't have this assessment correct, as someone who's lived here for nearly a decade now, it's like Dallas is the metropolitan city, almost like the northern city in the south, and there's trees. And the Fort Worth side is more like, I say it's where Midwest common sense intersects with southern hospitality. And there are no trees over there. So it's literally 2 different cities meshed together in this huge metropolitan area.
Yeah. I've always connected with Dallas more, and Fort Worth always seemed a little bit more foreign to me. I was just in Fort Worth a few weeks ago, and every time I pull up there, I'm just like, I haven't spent enough time here. I've been here my whole life. I always feel like a little disconnected from Fort Worth.
You ever seen the cows in the street when they herd them in and everything?
I've been down to the stockyards.
Yeah,
I've done all that stuff.
Yeah, okay.
But I just haven't, all my memories are going to Dallas, as a kid or whatever, and doing the big stuff there.
When people say they're going to visit the area, I tell them there's 2 things you can do here that you'll really want to do. And it's the JFK Museum on the Dallas side. I think they did a great job with that. It's really set up nicely.
Yeah.
And then in Fort Worth, I say, go down to the stockyards, watch them, herd the longhorns in the street. But, don't be doing that in the summer because it's miserable.
Right.
It's hot,
right.
gross.
Yeah.
But Yeah, it's just two distinct worlds, Dallas and Fort Worth.
Yeah, and I didn't do the JFK tour until about 5 years ago. It's something that, it's always been around. And whenever you live in like close to a big city and all the tourist stuff, you skip over it your whole life.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, maybe I should do that. And so my wife took me to do that tour like 5 years ago, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So your brother Craig,
Yes.
right? Where does he live?
He lives in the same area. We both, we're still here, Dallas-Fort Worth area.
So when you guys, because you do a podcast together called Weekdays with Craig and Brad, which, by the way, the theme song that y'all have, this like 80s vibe or whatever. I
put that together. It was a fun little project.
So good. It's
Thanks.
so good. But that's what I thought he was local. So why aren't you guys in the same room together?
Well, let's see. I don't know. We both started our careers about the same time. He was in the gaming industry for the last 15 years. I've been in the music industry for the last 15 years. Yeah. We've both been doing separate things on and off. Sometimes I would peek in and sort of help him out with his stuff. I'd create content with him for his company back in the day. And, just after 15 years, 20 years or so, we started talking last November, October or so, like, why don't we do a podcast together and just see how it goes? And it's called Weekdays because we were doing it every day for 5 days a week, every day.
That's tough.
And it is tough. And we really were draining ourselves. We were taking time away from our families and everything else. But we scaled it back for the second season. We just do it on Sunday nights right now to sort of make things easier. And it's just fun. It's kind of a thing that we do just for ourselves. And
it seriously doesn't seem to have... there's no rules, really. It's just two brothers talking about what's going on in the world, right?
Yeah, it's real easy going. We get on about like 30 minutes before we get on or so, when you say, what do you want to talk about today? And then we just go with it and we riff it, and we derail all the time. We'll pick a subject, and then we'll talk for the first 45 minutes and be like, maybe we should get to...
I was saying the ADD definitely swims around in the room. No, I like it. I like the conversational style, and you guys have good chemistry together for sure. And you have another brother and a sister. How close is your group in age there?
My oldest brother is 8 years older than I am. Okay. He lives in California. He works for Facebook. And then my sister lives in Lubbock, and she's a few years younger than my oldest brother. She's about 6 years older than I am. So I'm the youngest. Yeah. And then there's Craig, and Craig and I were the closest in age. We're 2 years apart. Cool. And so we grew up with the same love of, we're 80s, 90s kids and all the pop culture stuff that, helps us connect during our podcast and gives us that vibe that we're going for. But it's a lot of fun. Yeah, we're all pretty close, and it's a good little tight-knit family.
That's great, man. That's really cool. I will say that your earliest memory has had me listening to the Monkees all day in preparation for this interview, because that's your earliest memory. A 1987 reunion concert of the Monkees with Weird Al Yankovic as the opener. That had been a fun time. I mean, how much do you remember from that?
So I had this memory of walking out to the field. We had nosebleed field tickets for that concert. My oldest brother, had won the tickets through a radio contest, and I always had a vague memory of it, and them playing Last Train to Clarksville. I was only 3 years old or something like that, and it just stuck with me forever. And I have kind of scaled back. You look back over your life, and you're like, well, what's my earliest memory? I'm pretty sure that was it, because I'll never forget that I'm still a big fan of the Monkees. I'm still a big fan of Weird Al. They've been
such an underrated band that should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And I've gotten to meet all four Monkees throughout my life, and each little meeting with them was something special and very cool. Mickey Dolenz was one of the coolest rock stars I've ever met and had the chance to chat with.
I've heard he's incredibly nice.
Super nice guy. Like, I was nervous because I'm like, oh my gosh, you're like one of my favorite voices of music of all time. You're my first memory as a kid. And I had the chance to hang out with him after a show once, and I think he knew I was kind of nervous. I was geeking out a little bit, and he just made me feel so at home and so comfortable, kept the conversation rolling. I really appreciated that. Otherwise, I would have been like, remember when you were in the Monkees? And it would have been that conversation.
You had a TV show. How was that? Was that fun?
Yeah.
So, any chance... I mean, you were 3, so I'm not going to hold you to this, but any chance you have a ticket stub from that laying around?
I do have a ticket stub. My mom is bless her, has kept so many great things throughout my life. toys, photo books of, all our old family trips and stuff.
Hey, can I just say, let me interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Your mom is not a pack rat. She has foresight.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, seriously, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's helped me remember so many things throughout my life because you tend to forget these things, and then you have these little nuggets of things that you come across. And I was looking through a book one day, a photo book, and I see the monkey's ticket. I'm like, oh, this is an artifact from my very first memory as a kid.
How awesome, because it just takes that one little spark, and then you can remember so much.
Yeah.
That is really cool, man.
Yeah. She gave me a box full of like my old toys a few Christmases back. And I was like, what are you doing with all this stuff?
Right.
You know? And then you remember everything, You're like, oh, I had this. I got this for my fourth.
What a great
birthday.
gift idea.
I know.
Just re-gift your old toys.
Yeah. What a great investment 30 years ago. $7 for an action figure or something like that. And now my kids get to play with it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I kept for my kids. And I kept them at the time, not so much to collect them, but just because I knew one day I wanted my kids to really like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
Now, they played with them they humored me for maybe a week or two when they were younger with the He-Man action figures, but then they just kind of forgot about it, which is cool because I'm not getting rid of them.
Right.
I mean, that's nostalgia that I cannot be without.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so grew up here in Dallas. You went to community college for a bit. Then you went to art school for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got into the world of music.
Yeah.
And while I've got you here, I just want to say that Proud of You is an excellent song.
Oh, thanks.
Absolutely. Tell us how you got into the music world. I mean, is this something that as a kid you were into music and just turned it into a career, or what happened?
Yeah, I found my grandpa had gotten a guitar as a gift from my grandma in the 70s at some point. And it's an amazing thing to think that had my grandma never bought that guitar for my grandpa, I probably wouldn't be making music.
Isn't that crazy how the smallest little thing turns into a life changer?
Yeah, because years later, I'm about 11 years old, I find that guitar in a closet. And I had already been sort of into music. I had cassette tapes I listened to on the school bus going to school while other kids were listening to bands like Nirvana. Right. I'm listening to Billy Joel and the Temptations and like I'm really into these non-hit bands at the time. But I find this guitar. I was really into the Beatles too. It's got one string on it. I'm completely fascinated by this thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a real guitar in my house. And so we take it to the local guitar shop. The guy there strung it up and he played the first chord I ever heard on the guitar. He just strung it up and he went ring. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that.
Nice.
And so I started when I was 11. I started writing songs when I was about 14 in high school. Was writing, recording to a cassette tape throughout high school, songs that I was writing for girls I liked or something like that. I'd give them a cassette tape and be like, I really like you. I hope you'll go out with me. Here's a song I wrote. And by the time I graduated, I knew that was what I wanted to do. I was 18, and I had started 5 Times August right out of high school that summer.
Yeah, how'd you get that name?
My birthday is August 5th, and I did not, as we've learned at the beginning of the show, Skistimas is not a comfortable name to remember. So I was like, I don't want to promote Brad Skistimas. I've got to come up with something else. And at the time, it was kind of like, there were bands like Dashboard Confessional, where it's like one-man band kind of names. And I came up with 5 Times August, like noodling around with the idea of like my birthday, August 5th. And I don't remember what else I had written down, but that 5 Times August sounded the coolest. Mm-hmm. And then I just used it, and it's kind of stuck with me all this time, 20 years into it. I've been doing it 2 decades, which is mind-blowing to me.
Wow.
So if you had told me at 18 years old, like, oh, well, you better make sure it's a cool name because, you're going to be with it for a long time.
Right.
And that's where I started. So after high school, I tried to go back to, you tell your parents you want to be a singer-songwriter or an artist, and they're like, well, you might want to get the backup plan in order. And so, I went to community college, and I felt like community college was like kind of like a grown-up high school experience or something like that.
Huh.
And I was like, well, I wasn't really interested. But I also was very artistic growing up. My dad was an illustrator, and I had learned so much from him. I was like, well, I could be an artist of some kind. So I went to the Art Institute of Dallas for a little bit. And but my interest I kept getting sidetracked. I was so absorbed with music. That's all I wanted to do. I was booking shows for myself, recording stuff at home, playing shows, whatever, getting my career off the ground. And I was just in it 24 hours a day, every day of the week, trying to figure out my path with this. And that was the beginning of it all. While my other friends from high school were going off to college, and I kind of felt like, am I doing the right thing? This is what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. So, I just kind of stuck with it.
And you eventually end up on MTV.
Yeah.
Right?
So about 3 years into it, like I'm playing around Dallas, Texas, doing shows, doing whatever I can, a starving artist. I was working at CBS Radio at the time as a promotions kid.
Yeah.
And that's where I met my wife.
Okay.
And they really helped me. I had a boss there who really helped me get some cool gigs early on that kind of saw the potential in what I was doing. And about 2004, a music supervisor for MTV found my stuff on a website called cdbaby.com. And I think it's still around today.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's like an independent website for independent artists to sell their music.
Cool.
And he found it, asked me to send him a CD for this show he was working on called MTV's Laguna Beach, reality TV for teenagers. And I sent him my CD. I was like, some guy from MTV wrote me. No harm in sending him a CD.
Right.
So, I overnighted a CD. He ended up using a song off that CD, the first season of Laguna Beach, which was a real prominent placement.
Yeah.
And like at the end of the episode, like we had a big watching party with my friends and everything. At the end of the episode, they're like, "You just heard Better With You by 5 Times August." And then my plays on MySpace were going up, and it was crazy.
MySpace.
Yeah, and this was back in the MySpace days.
Sure. So what year are we talking
We're
about?
about 2004,
Yeah.
and in 2005, I had a lot more song placements through MTV programs, and I started touring colleges, and it was the right demographic for what I was doing.
Nice.
And it was a great way to get off the ground, because usually, when you start your music career, you play a club, and then 2 people show up, and you hope that they come back next time with 2 more friends, and you really got to work it. Well, because I was at social media was at its infancy, and you're sitting there on MySpace and you're watching all these people from around the country connect with your music, say, I'm from Indiana, I'm from Chicago, I'm from whatever. And I kind of let that sit for a while, and I was like, okay, where are my 3 biggest cities that I've developed a following from this exposure that I've had on MTV? And that was my first tour. I was like, I'm going to go there. I didn't really worry about
smart.
Dallas anymore. So I went there and I played some coffee shops and stuff. And then over time, I got into the college circuit, and I was playing a lot of universities, which was even better because you get paid for those shows and they're free for the students. So I could fill in an auditorium just playing acoustic guitar for doing a free show for the kids with the schools paying in, and then the kids didn't pay for the tickets, but they got money for merch afterwards.
Nice.
So it was a really
that is the best
lucrative
of both. Right.
formula for an artist at the time. And so that was the beginning of things. And I did that for about 6 years, touring colleges. It was just driving everywhere was crazy. You're doing it all yourself. And so that was nuts.
Oh my goodness, I can't imagine. But it paid off, right? I mean,
at that time,
because you write plenty of stuff too. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no,
For other people.
For other, am I a songwriter for other people?
Yeah.
I'm more so have become a songwriter for TV and film at some points.
For other, okay, yeah.
And, I've always sort of been my own songwriter, writing whatever I want. I mean, I've done so many different things over the last 20 years. I've been, the troubadour singer-songwriter dude who's trying to be like John Mayer. That's all I wanted to be early on. Dave Matthews, John Mayer, Jason Mraz, those were my influences. And after touring the colleges, I was trying to figure out what else I would do, and I wrote some kind of jazzy soul throwback stuff and did a side project. And the last couple of years, I was doing kids music with my own family, recording kids music with my family at home, and then this year I'm doing a whole new crop of songs that are, very modern, protesty kind of stuff. And I kind of always just wrote whatever I wanted to write. But the interim projects have definitely been like, movie projects and commercials and things like that.
And I will say, if folks haven't had a chance to check out what you refer to there as more current protest type songs, You do an excellent job of tackling current events through catchy music.
Thanks.
And they really need to check out your stuff. Is the best place to find you where you post that stuff? My default is Twitter, at 5 times August on Twitter. Are there better places for people to check out your stuff?
I mean, if you go to 5timesaugust.com, just the website, I've got my latest stuff on the front page, and you can check it out. I want to send people to the social media websites, but because of the things that I've been posting lately, I feel like at some point I'll get booted anyway. So I'm trying to tell people, go to the website, just make sure you're on the mailing list, follow me on all the social media websites as well. But just in case I get booted at some point, because it does happen, make sure you're on the mailing list or whatever. But
if people haven't had a chance to check out your stuff, your basically commentary through song, they really need to take a moment. Go to 5timesaugust.com. You've got the series that features Neil Young's Old Man, and I mean, it's just really great stuff. So anyway, people should really check that out.
I wear many hats.
Yes. You do. And it's very difficult to describe you, you know? And so kudos to you.
Thanks.
Because you do have your hand in pretty much everything.
Singer-songwriter, meme maker.
Podcaster.
Yeah. Dad, for sure. Top of the list.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you, I have 3 kids. Yours are 9, 7, and 4. 2 boys and a girl. So is it a boy, girl?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Oh, well then I'm sure that they protect little sister and they love that, right?
Oh, yeah. They're all in karate together. And the funny thing is, like, you'd think that in that scenario, you'd see the older brother's protecting little sister, but she's come out. Like, she's getting pretty aggressive on the mat. So I think over time she'll be able to handle her own. So that's great.
That is great. And your wife is Kelly.
Yes.
And you met at that radio station then?
Yeah, we met. I was 19, and we met working in radio. She's actually one of my bosses at the radio station. We were all working in the promotions department, and I would be one of those kids that's out there at the car dealership, and we're like, we're located at so and so, and we're giving away buttons today or something. I'd be out there, and she was actually engaged at the time, and we sort of became good friends. We became good friends, and we were working so much together over that time. Just to clarify, the guy was terrible. So
absolutely. I mean, it's like a Hallmark movie, right? Where you're the good guy and she's about to make the worst mistake of her life, and you swoop in on the scene saying, no, wouldn't you much rather hang out with me?
Yeah.
See?
It was serendipity or something like that.
You're the good guy.
Absolutely. So she was starting to help me book shows in the area with my other boss, and they were helping me get to events to play at for the radio station, which is really cool. And ultimately, we ended up leaving the radio station, and she starts becoming the manager, basically. We were like a mom and pop operation of independent music, where she would be the business side of things, and she would handle contracts, book the shows, book the tours, the routing, everything like that. And I would be the talent, and I would go and execute the show, meet the fans afterwards, sign autographs, and do all that stuff. But we were just knocking it out. We were traveling the country, driving here and there 10 hours a day, living in a van, doing that whole thing. Our whole 20s, like, we look back now and we're like, how did we survive?
Right. Now driving across the metro area is exhausting. Yeah. How do you do that? I'm with you.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I still feel it in my bones, like all hunched into my front seat of my van, driving 10 hours a day. But I look back and I'm like, I have no idea how we survived that. We made it through without any real major break-ins. The only break-in I had was in Dallas, of all places, of my van. Right before a tour, I had my van was broken into, and they took my iPod.
What?
All things, but
no, that reminds me how, and I apologize to the audience if I repeat the stories like an old man in his rocking chair, and you hear, we've heard this story, but my wife and I lived in the hood of Houston, Texas. Never had a problem with any. We heard about crime around us, but never had a problem that we experienced.
Yeah.
2 weeks after we moved to the western edge of Omaha, Nebraska, literally next to a cornfield, our apartment complex, my stereo got stolen out of my car.
Wow.
It's just weird.
That's how it works, you know? Like, we made it through the south side of Chicago once, like getting gas. We had to get gas.
Oh, no.
We stopped in the south side of Chicago, and I'm filling up. I fill up about a quarter tank before I'm like, I got to get out of here because I'm getting looks at this station. I'm like, I do not belong here. I just got to get out. Bye. So yeah, it was crazy. But you get through all these situations. You look back on it, you're like, how in the world? Because I'm edging on to 40 now, and I'm like, no way would I let my kids go tour the country right now. And clearly they're younger now, but even like thinking like if they're 20 years old right now, no way I'm letting them go on their own.
Right?
So
seriously.
Yeah.
But in fairness to that take by you, it is a different world than just 10 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
And it's sad, but it's true.
Right. Yeah, very
okay.
true.
So y'all met. Is she from Dallas as well, or?
Yeah, we both grew up in the area, so we're Dallas kind of natives.
Okay.
We've been here all our lives.
Good place to be.
Yeah.
I asked you if you had any hobbies, and outside of music, you have the drawing that you alluded to earlier. I guess it runs in your blood through your dad.
Right. Yeah.
But you also put Legos as a hobby. Now, my kids, and I'm sure your kids as well, just love the Legos.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, their toy room is just lined with different creations.
Yeah.
Is that something you do as well? Because I would have thought that at this point, pushing 40, you might not keep doing that. But
Well, I don't really sit and tinker with Legos.
Okay.
Like, I don't sit and make
you're just a
things.
fan of Legos.
I'm a fan of Legos. Like, they have what's called the Lego, I think it's called like the Lego Dark Ages for guys our age, where like we played with Legos growing up. And then we became teenagers, and then we, went through our 20s. But then you have kids one day, and your kids get into Legos, and then it reignites you going, oh, the Legos were pretty cool. And so I kind of, got nerdy once the kids started getting into Legos. And there's so many cool big sets out there now that, especially sets that cater to like 80s, 90s kids, like the big Batmobile they put out from the 89 Batmobile and the Ghostbusters Ecto-1. So I get into those sort of things. I'm like, well, that'd be cool. I'd like to put that together, and we sit around with the kids and we make it a family project and sort of build it together. And that's
cool.
sort of what I mean. But
fun.
But my kids, I mean, we had an office upstairs, and our office has become the Lego room. And I'm a kid at heart, and I think when I see Legos at the store, it's like, yeah, I guess we can get that set, and you try to play it off like you're Mr. Tough Guy or something, but deep down you're like, yeah, I want that too.
No kidding. I'm with you. I gotcha. So your kids have lots of Legos, I'd imagine? I mean, just
tons.
Do you have, like my house, just bin after bin after bin?
I have
Legos
bins I have tried to organize so many times that you just got to let it go at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's my assignment for you. Here's your mission, should you choose to accept it. I would love for you to tweet out to me some random tweet at some undetermined point in the future where you tag me on a tweet and just say whatever your estimate is of how many Lego pieces are in your house. And then we'll know. You and I will know that that's code. That you're just transmitting on the slide to me. I mean, I'll out you once you if you tag me and just put a number, then I'll retweet it and I'll say something about you finally got around to counting all the Lego pieces in your house, huh?
Yeah.
Because I should probably do that. It could be a rough estimate, but I need to talk to my kids and have them count them up because my gosh. I can't even imagine what that number is.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea?
Well, no, I have
Thousands.
no idea. I'd have to look through all their instructions and add up, the piece count and then make a good solid estimate or something. Because there's big pieces and there's little pieces. And then you've got platforms and there's so many ways to count these things.
Right.
And
how often have you stepped on them with bare feet?
I'm pretty good about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty good about that too.
I watch out for that.
Every now and then they sneak up on me.
Oh, for sure. They do leave, like, I have had a number of run-ins where, like, they leave a finished set out on the floor or one that they're working on, and then you just sort of demolish it by kicking it over, I don't really step on it, but I'm like,
my bad.
I'm like, who left that here?
Right, don't put it right in the main traffic area,
Yeah,
What are you doing?
Right in the middle of the hallway.
So you, even though are a child of the 80s and 90s, you're big into 60s music. How'd that happen?
Yeah. I think that came about from probably spurring off of that early Monkees memory. I kind of discovered a lot of music through my parents' record collection growing up. They had their records from they were younger, and I ended up kind of getting those, over time and discovering music from there. And my oldest brother was really into music from the 60s, and I used to rag on him because I remember being a kid and being like, you only listen to music of people who are dead. And then then one day I put it on, I'm like, but it's pretty good. And so,
Nice.
But over time, as you, especially once I started playing guitar, you're like, oh, those are fundamental bands and artists to know, and the Beatles were a huge influence. They made me want to pick up the guitar, as they've done for so many people. It's the Beatles. They've got a lot of hype around them. And so I just grew up listening to that. And then you go, well, who else sounds like the Beatles? And then you find these other bands, British rock and roll bands from the 60s. But I really, over time, I love so much music that going back to the 20s. I don't know if I like so much current music as much. Every time I put on mainstream radio right now, I feel like an old man because I'm like, I want to give this a shot.
Yeah.
And I put it on for like 3 minutes. And I'm like, no. So I think like the last time I was really into modern music was like 2005 or 6.
Yeah.
2008 maybe was like the last time I bought a new current album. I still appreciate like John Mayer, singer-songwriter kind of guys that are writing songs, because that's who I am. But yeah, I really, I don't know. The 60s is like the era of time where you went into a studio and you recorded together, the track, and you were in there together. And that's something you don't do anymore. And that was the way it was for a long time. But nowadays you do everything piece by piece and you make sure it's synchronized precisely. And the feel of it is sort of removed these days of music. And also the substance in music lyrically today doesn't seem to be as important. It's all basically raunchy sex lyrics or something like that.
Do you, as a big music geek, as I can identify with that, do you find yourself trying to make sure that your kids know who the Beatles are?
Yeah.
Big 60s acts and stuff like that. You make sure.
Oh, yeah. They go record shopping with me.
Cool.
My favorite store is like half-price bookstores, and I always like go in there and thumb through the records, and they've come with me. And if they see a record, they'll be like, hey, look, it's the Beatles or whatever.
Very cool.
I had somebody at a record store once, like they heard my oldest son. He was like 3 at the time or 4. I think he had seen like a Michael Jackson record or something like that. And he was like, hey, it's Michael Jackson. And like this lady next to us was like, you're raising them so good.
Nice, nice.
But yeah, they absolutely know. Their first concert was actually, we went to see Mickey Dolenz, and he had the Fab Four, a Beatles cover band, open for them here in Texas. And that was their first concert experience. So it was kind of cool that my first memory concert experience was the Monkees, and
nice
I got to
job.
take them back to do that as well. And they got to meet Mickey after the show as well, and he was super kind to them again. And
Oh, cool.
so
I will say, one way to get your kids more into music, what you do is as you're going down the road and you're playing a song for them, and you make sure that you cover up so their eyes aren't going to focus on what's playing there on the dash. But you offer money, And this is what I do. I'm like, all right, guys, you get one guess each, $5 if you can tell me the name of this band. or if it's something else, I'll say, you get, I used to, because I started off giving them like $1, and then the second guess, and you get 75 if you get on the third guess.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but it's actually very funny that very recently, and this just occurred to me, I thought there's no way that my oldest daughter knows this is the Monkees. It's just ironic. This is just hitting me. And I said, I'll give you $10 if you can tell me what band this is. And she immediately said the Monkees. I was like, dang it, I'm teaching y'all too well.
Yeah, I don't have $10 right now,
Seriously.
but you will get it in time.
And I never set the price that high. It was so stupid of me. Anyhow.
Well, no, that means you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
I think a lot with my kids is I still buy physical media, and I think having records and CDs and even cassettes around sparks their interest. It sparked my interest early on. And these days, everything is so digital that, if a parent has all their music on their phone, there's no way for the kid, unless they're on, Amazon, the Amazon app or Spotify or Apple Music, to really discover
Right.
the music that their parents are listening to. And even if they do, they're scrolling through stamp-sized artwork that's on the phone, and it's like a 1/4 inch of the size. But my kids, they've had records around their whole life. They think they're normal, for most kids, and they even have their own little record collection, a record player in their room, and they love it because it's something different. They get to hold it and look at it, and they put it on, and they get to watch the needle play, and it's a fascinating experience. It's better than boop boop.
Right,
What do you want to listen to? Scroll, thumb, boop boop.
And I'm with you. CDs aren't as intimate as records, but even still, I would wear out a jewel case and the liner notes.
Right.
And if you bought a CD that didn't have lyrics, it was before the internet. I was like, what in the world? What?
Yeah.
Then you just have to make it up and hope that you're right. And then you find out 20 years later, oh my gosh, I've been singing this thing wrong. But my oldest daughter is just recently started to drive, has her first car, and it's so bad. But I am so excited because her car has, I can't believe I'm saying her car, by the way. It just feels weird. But her car has a CD player. And I'm like, oh, somebody can get use out of my 1,000+ CD collection.
Yeah.
Wow, yay. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm more excited for that than anything else with that car.
Isn't that incredible? A car with the CD player is something to appreciate these days.
Right. And I recently got a different vehicle, and it doesn't have a CD player, and I was really bummed. I'm like, that's not cool.
Yeah, you need it. I mean, you get to pop it in, and it makes you commit to listening. Like if you put in a CD, you're committed to the CD. Whereas like these days, it's all Spotify. It's playlists, So you're kind of thinking subconsciously like, well, what else do I want to listen to? Whereas like I remember back in the day, you'd have a binder full of CDs in high school or something.
Totally.
And you're like, well, what do I want to listen to on the drive?
Yes. And there's so many drives between Atlanta and Nebraska, where I lived and where I went to school. And every summer, I would.
You pick the CD, you pick the album, and you listen to the whole thing.
Yeah,
you don't just listen to the part you like and move on. And
see, with me back then, it was a case of most of my CDs would be packed, in the trunk or whatever. But you got to pick. You can pick 20 to leave in the little Velcro binder thing that you keep under the front seat for this trip, and you better like it. And it was literally, I would drive across the country, and I would listen to either Rush Limbaugh or whatever CDs I brought.
Yeah,
that was my.
You're committed at that point. We have too much choice right now,
right?
Where it's just so distracting. But
so let's see here. Last book you read was Dissolving Illusions. What's that about?
That was about the truth of vaccines. I'm still reading. I bought it.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
It's about the truth of what's happened over the last several years, over the last several decades, I should say.
Yeah.
And I'm not too deep into it. I ordered it a while back. It's one of those books that's been sort of sitting around. I started it. It's been fascinating so far, but it takes you through. We get fed certain narratives on vaccine through media, and it kind of takes you backstage as to what's really happening. It's pretty interesting so far.
So it doesn't just focus on the current vaccine situation. It covers
all of them. Polio. It goes all the way back to polio and measles, and it has studies and everything. And it's a fascinating book so far. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah. I'd like
my
to check
wife
that out.
read it some time ago, and my wife has been involved in the medical freedom movement for a long time, and she's sort of been watching all this stuff unfold for a good 8 years now, and
saw this coming
from miles and miles away. And then I'm sort of trying to play catch up now, going like, oh, okay, time to get serious.
What an interesting time we're living in.
For sure.
You're big into reading biographies.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite one that stands out?
I had an Audible account for a good chunk of when my kids were born. You'd sit there in the rocking chair for hours, while they napped or whatever, and get that big sweat spot on your shirt.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yes, I know the feeling.
You're stuck. And so I was listening to a lot of biography books through Audible. I loved Steve Martin's biography. I listened to Pete Townshend's biography. There's a huge biography that covers the first, I think, what's it called? Tune In. It's a big Beatles book, and it's super thick. It's supposed to be the most comprehensive like Beatles thing. And this was volume 1. The guy's still working on volume 2. It starts from the beginning of the Beatles up to like 1962. It's hugely thick and a lot of really cool details in that book that, like, if you're a nerdy music Beatles fan, you're like, oh wow, there's a lot of, paints a nice picture of like Paul and John sitting across from each other writing "She Loves You" and things like that.
Wow.
But I love details like that. I love real information. I don't really get too caught up in sci-fi stuff or books like that. But I love finding out about people's stories.
As a Beatles fan, have you ever seen the movie Yesterday?
I did.
Is that not awesome?
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it.
Yeah.
How about you?
I connected with it. My mom thought it was hilarious because the guy, I mentioned I had been doing kids music for like the last three years, and I've been totally absorbed in that world, playing at elementary schools and having a great time doing. Those have been some of the best shows, by the way, playing for kids, singing with you, and just loving everything you're doing on stage.
Oh, cool.
But it's awesome because like that movie, the guy's the big Beatles fan. He's kind of struggling artist, and then he has this big thing. And at the end of the movie,
don't give it away. Well, it's been out since 2019. Give it away.
Well, I'm just saying, no spoiler alert. But he's.
If people don't know the story, that basically something happens on Earth, and nobody knows who the Beatles are.
Right.
And there's several things that
I think you can grasp that from the trailer.
You're right.
You're
right.
He becomes the writer of the Beatles stuff.
See, it's not fair to the rest of the world when I say don't spoil it, because most movies, it takes me 10 to 20 years to get around to watching them. And like, this is the one movie that I actually saw right after it came out.
Yeah.
And so I'm in an unusual position where I feel like, wow, don't ruin it. Keith, it's been out for over 2 years.
Yeah.
I think it's time to let it go.
Well, I'll just say this. If we don't want any spoilers, I'll just say I connected with it, as a songwriter and Beatles fan. I think, probably thousands of songwriters did as well, because it's a great question. What would the world be like, if the Beatles didn't exist?
Yeah.
And would their music have impacted culture the same way if other people had written it?
And so it falls on this guy, the star of the movie, to enlighten the rest of the world that, hey, there's some really good songs that this band made that you guys should really be familiar with. Yeah. It's so well done. Ed Sheeran is a big part of it. I just think it's a great movie. You can watch it with your kids. Yep. Hopefully they're old enough to appreciate it. Yeah. But Yesterday, 2019 movie that came out about the Beatles there. As much as you and I love tangible music, whether it's the records or the CDs or what have you, we obviously, both of us, enjoy Spotify. You listed that. It's so convenient and it's so helpful to have any song you want in your pocket.
Right.
But at the same time, there is something lost there.
Yeah, I use...
And you have a different perspective than me because you're actually making some of this music.
Right. The last 5 singles I've put out have all been digital singles, but I pine for having something to hand people. Yeah. I want you to have my music. I use streaming services all the time. It's a great way to discover music. Back in the day at the mall, they used to have listening stations with, you could go up and put a CD on and listen and see if you liked it. Oh, yeah. And that's been removed. They don't sell CDs in the mall anymore, really. So how do you discover music? And I kind of use it as a tool to help me find music I've never, I haven't discovered yet. And it's a good tool in the sense that, as well as there's a lot of curated playlists where they're like, if you like this, you might also like this. So it's a great tool, but I don't feel like I own it until I have it in my hands. So if I really find something that, an album or a song that really connects with me, or that I feel like I'm going to need to reference later, I don't feel like I own it or I've contributed to that, my appreciation of it, until I have a tangible copy of it to slide into, the CD wall or the record wall or something. No. And I also feel like those things say a lot about you and who you are. My kids will, for better or worse, they're going to get handed down a whole bunch of records and CDs one day, and they'll either be like, what are we supposed to do with all this stuff? Or they'll be like, well, this says a lot about who our dad was. Right. And he told me all about, this album and this song and how it impacted his life. And I think that's missing a lot with not just music, physical music, but physical everything.
Yeah.
I had a story recently where I was talking about, I was at church and one guy had his Bible on his iPad. The guy next to him had a Bible that was tattered, beat up, and, looked like it had been through a couple decades of church. Mm-hmm. And I asked the guy about his Bible. I said, is that your Bible? And he's like, well, actually, it's my grandpa's. Mm. And that says something. You're not going to hand down an iPad or an iPod or an iPhone over the decades. You're not going to even have the charger for it at some point.
Right.
And what are our kids going to inherit,
And on top of that, it's easy to manipulate. Yeah. You could change digital. You could obliterate it. I mean, we've seen movies and books just get taken off of platforms, whether it's Netflix or stuff's no longer sold on Amazon.
Right.
So, I mean, it's so easy to destroy that record or just subtly alter it as well. But I'm with you. It's so convenient, yet it's so dangerous at the same time.
Yeah, it really is. I think that, you got to walk that fine line of convenience. If you're just... It's kind of, I don't know, look at Star Wars, for instance. How hard is it to watch the original Star Wars that was in the theaters? It's kind of hard to watch that these days. You can't really find it easily. You have to get the VHS tape from, the 80s or something before they changed it. Yeah. But that goes with all, not just with entertainment, with just information. If you get a book, you're not going to open a book and just see a whole bunch of stuff crossed out. As you can do on the internet, you might find a link and you might go, well, I've got to reference that link at some point. And it might just be gone. It's just gone. And you're like, I can't prove what I wanted to say anymore because it's gone. So we're definitely walking like a dangerous fine line of convenience and, having artifacts of our history.
Yeah.
It's easy to lump things up and to, just being like, well, it's just stuff. It's taking up space. But it also is a thing that represents who we are at that time and who you are and what you appreciated, the information that you were into. And, we just got to watch it.
But you're right, though. You may just end up not having a charger. And then, oh my gosh, what all is on that iPad that I would love to have access to? Yeah. And plus, we're just one EMP bomb away from losing everything digitally anyway. So,
yeah. Well, like our parents' generation has an interesting thing because they've grown up into, they've had so many eras of time that now they're in this. I don't think they ever would have imagined that they could carry a phone in their pocket when they were a kid and also take pictures with it. But they have this like kind of confusion with it where they're using it. They're taking the pictures and then they use the phone and they record things on it and they have their grand pictures and they share it, their grandkids' pictures on their phone. They share them with their friends or whatever, but they don't know how to take those pictures off of their phone, at the end of the day. And then it just sits on the phone until they need a new phone. And then you got, a kitchen drawer with old phones in it. And there's so much, of your life sitting there that'll never be seen. It's like a digital dark age that's just sort of sitting in its own little cube, not doing anything. Nobody will remember it.
But I wonder if someday down the line they'll find a way to turn it on, your grandkids or something, and it'll almost be like opening a box of pictures that they didn't realize were in the house too. Yeah. We can only hope that's one thing we should invest in is just buy a whole bunch of charging cords, power cords for your iPads or your Androids or whatever, and just tuck those away somewhere in your house.
Yeah. Try to make sure you keep up with that stuff for sure.
Back to our conversation with Brad in just a moment, but first, let's talk about getting that pain your body experiences under control. And how can you do that? It's simple. Try Dr. Monroe's Freeze Gel. I think you're going to be experiencing the same relief that I have felt time and time again. This stuff works for me instantly because it has everything from Dr. Monroe's signature product, that's the Pro 8000 cream, has everything it has, but it also has the added menthol cooling and the easy-to-apply roller ball, along with patented K-channel technology for maximum potency as it targets that stubborn pain. Don't forget that 20% of any purchase made at drmonroescbd.com goes directly to the Child Help Abuse Hotline. So you're doing good for you and for so many others who need your assistance. Please check out all of the pain-reducing products over at drmonroescbd.com Be sure to use promo code Keith. Going to get yourself 15% off your entire purchase. That's promo code Keith over at drmonroescbd.com today. Music and your talent and your career. I want to talk about the unique position that you were in with a Kickstarter campaign that was really very unique at the time. I read where it was like the biggest Kickstarter thing that was successful or something. Yeah. Very early on, you did a campaign to record an album.
Right.
And tell us how that, what was that like?
Yeah, as an independent artist, you're looking for ways to stay ahead of the curve and just knock down walls and barriers as in what you're doing. So when a website like Kickstarter comes along, you kind of look at it and you're like, well, how can I benefit from this? What is it? And it was a way to raise money for projects. And I was like, oh, cool. And then you look at it and you go, well, what are people doing on it? You know, raising money for movies and stuff. I don't think there was very many musicians on it at the time. And if there were, they weren't really going for very big amounts of money. And so I was getting ready to release an album. I decided to use Kickstarter to help me fund it. At the time, I was the first artist to shoot for $20,000 on the website. And we raised $20,000 in a month for that album. And that was the first time that had been done on the website. These days, you know, millions of dollars are being raised through, you know, crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter. And there's a billion other ones out there. But at the time, yeah, that was a very unique thing. It was very cool to accomplish that with just, you know, an artist reaching out to their fans and saying, look, we want to release an album. But I was always looking for things to you know, sort of break down the barriers of what an independent artist could do. Because I've been an independent artist the entire 20 years of my career. And I have had my albums in Walmart and Best Buy stores distributed across the country. I've had the song licenses on TV shows and commercials and things like that. So I'm always looking for ways to sort of hold my own as an independent artist. And by the time I was even meeting with major record labels, I didn't even feel like they had anything to offer to me anymore because I had accomplished so much. I was like, well, I'm already on the road. I've already got my album in stores, getting placements on these big TV shows, which kind of was a go around for radio exposure at the time, which radio is a whole other game when you're like, you know, trying to get a song spliced in between the latest, you know, whatever it is, Kelly Clarkson or whoever was hot at the time.
Right.
So yeah, Kickstarter was a very cool thing, and I went for it. We did $20,000 in a month, and it was just one of those first milestones for Kickstarter, and it was a milestone for me as well.
Yeah, I tell you, it's the generosity of your fans is something to behold. Something like a Kickstarter, this program itself, I asked, hey, can you help out through GoFundMe? And the response was amazing. I mean, people, this country is still filled with generous people, and it's just great to be able to see that manifest, whether it's this show, your thing, but just anything like a disaster or something happens. Oh my gosh, how awesome are the people in this country?
Right.
It's still great.
It's right underneath. You know, I said this on our podcast. I was talking about how like we've got this real dirty froth on top of our mindset right now that everything sucks and everybody's mad. But it's right underneath it is this beautiful time of giving and love and convenience. And it's just right underneath there if we let ourselves have it, but we're focused on all this ridiculousness.
So true.
So
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The most scared you've ever been taking your second born to the NICU shortly after he was born.
Yeah.
What was going on? What happened, man? Because I mean that just reading that sentence is terrifying.
Yeah, it's very much a blur. It was the most grown up I had ever felt in my entire life at that point. We had brought home our baby for about a week, and he was having coughing fits in the middle of the night. His stomach was very hard. We took him in, and they wanted to do a spinal tap on him. And this was a moment where like a defining moment where I knew like, okay, I have to step up and actually be a grown-up right now, because there was a doctor in there. He's going to perform. There's 2 doctors in there. One was experienced. One was clearly not experienced. Pulls out this big needle for a spinal tap for my baby. And he's asking the other doctor, like, okay, so I do this and I do that. And I'm like, no, you are not doing this. So I had to like stop the guy. I'm like, she's doing this. If you're asking her how to do this,
oh gosh,
I'm like, I'm not letting you practice.
No, this
on my baby.
Right. Nope.
So the other doctor performed it, and our middleborn was in the NICU for a week. We were there. There's lots of prayers and hanging tight. And I can't remember exactly what they said was wrong at this point. But, it's one of those
like
things.
You said, it's a blur.
Yeah, it was such a blur.
You just know that everything got better?
Yeah, we went home after a week, and, it's just one of those moments where, like, having kids is such a scary thing throughout the whole pregnancy. Having the baby, you're just hoping everything turns out okay. They're healthy. They come out with, 5 fingers, 5 toes. They can see okay. And then you get home, and then it's a whole other level of like, okay, now we're here. Is everything okay? So a week into it, to know you have to go back to the hospital was a scary thing. And that it's your little baby, There's nothing scarier than that.
And they can't communicate with you.
Right.
That's just it. It's like once they learn how to start talking and communicating, you're like, okay, well, now if there's a problem, they can say, oh, it hurts here.
Yeah.
But, there's a few years in there where you're just like, okay, I'm going to try to figure this out. But it's the worst feeling in the world to know that your child is suffering, not being able to do anything about it.
Oh, yeah.
And not really being able to communicate with them about that.
Yeah.
So
and there's so many hands on your baby, bringing in shots and different things, drawing blood and doing all these different tests, that it's just a scary thing. So, my wife and I, we just stayed there the whole time. Thankfully, he's now 7, and he's a normal, happy kid.
That's great. Favorite comfort food? I tell you, this answer comes up so often. And it's mine as well. Pizza.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said plenty on this podcast about pizza, but tell me,
pizza is a problem for me.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if subconsciously the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did a number on my conscience as a kid or something like that, but I can't escape pizza. I could have pizza for a week and swear I'll never eat pizza again and be sick of it for about 3 hours and then be like, are there leftovers?
That's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't let go of pizza. It just keeps coming back in my life. Good. And it's like such a guilty thing, because you've at this phase in life, you've got birthday parties and different gatherings and whatever it is, that pizza keeps showing up, or whether it's like a convenience night where you're like, well, we don't have time to make dinner. Let's just get pizza. It happens more often than not.
Uh-huh.
And then you're like, well, we had pizza 2 days ago.
Oh, no, that's not me.
Yeah.
I was with you till then. No, I'm like, I can take pizza for lunch tomorrow.
Yeah.
But you had pizza yesterday for lunch and supper. Yeah, I know.
It's
cool. We're good.
Yeah.
I literally should consider changing the name of this podcast to Pizza and Stuff.
Pizza time with Keith.
Yeah, we talk pizza and stuff.
I just, we've been on, my wife and I have been on like this big health journey. No matter how healthy we get, pizza is always like, it always pulls us back into laziness, no matter what we're doing. We can be juicing for a week or whatever. You can even fast for a whole week and be like, all right, I did a great thing. And then you take it all back in a weekend because you're like, pizza time.
So I got to hear about this embarrassing moment where your zipper was down in front of a small intimate crowd or something for... Like, what happened? What's going on there?
I don't get embarrassed easily. I mean, I'm a goofball. I'm a kid at heart. If you watch our show, Weekdays with Craig and Brad, like, I'm spitting water out of my mouth sometimes and letting it drool all over my shirt sometimes. And so I don't get embarrassed very easily. But I did do a show. This was a college show, some years back. And I'm about halfway through the show, and it's in an intimate little setting, kind of a coffee shop kind of setting. And somebody points out in the front row that my zipper's down, and it's one of those zipper down situations where like there's a hole that, like your jeans are folded open. So like I don't know what, thank God for underwear in those moments.
To say, not only that, but that's where you're hoping that the underwear is dark.
Yeah.
Because if it's white, then it's like, hello.
Yeah. So what made it, I think, more embarrassing than it was that I'm like, oh, I better turn around and zip up my fly here. As I turn around, but behind me is this gigantic glass window, and it's night, so it's basically like a mirror. So I'm turning around just to zip it up in front of a mirror. So it's just a small little moment.
How long was the fly down, do you think?
I don't know, probably a good 20 minutes or something like that.
And you're up there with an acoustic guitar.
I'm up there singing passionate love songs, looking like a doofus.
Is there a video of this?
I don't know. Probably. Probably.
That's good stuff. No, that's.
But at the end of the day, it's kind of just funny. I can't remember a really hardcore embarrassing moment where I was like, oh gosh, I gotta get out of here.
No, that's good. So you work in a tough industry with the music and singer songwriting. You've had some run-ins with some cheats, some fakes along the line. Is there anybody you want to out?
I would love to list names right now, but I will not.
Okay. All right.
I'm a bigger man than that.
Had to give you the option.
Yeah. No, my arc of my career has been very weird. So my career started out right out of high school, and at the time, this is like early 2000s, 2001, and the mindset back then was, I'm going to record my hits, get my radio songs, get my record deal, and that's your naive outlook on your music career is like, I'm going to become a big star. And then the internet's kind of changing this industry that you thought you had an understanding of how you go about things. Mm-hmm. And people are now discovering artists through different platforms, and then I'm realizing, oh, I can be an independent artist. I don't actually have to have a record label, but also you're trying to reach another level in your career. And so I had worked with some companies that were sort of like ghost labels, where basically like they're supposed to give you the contacts and the experience of being on a record label, but you're basically flipping the bill. Now, the benefit of it is like you still own everything. You own your records and your recordings, and you're not tied to the record label at the end of the day. But at the same time, you're flipping the bill for it. And if you hire the wrong company, they'll take your money, they'll kind of do their job, and then it helps you none, but you spend all this money. So I've worked with a lot of those people, or I had worked with a lot of those people at one point. This was like about 2008, where you're trying to get to that next level, and you want to get, you kind of hit the ceiling with what you think you can do as an independent artist. And you're watching, a lot of my peers in the music industry, guys that I was doing shows with, they were still getting record label deals. And so you're trying to do this thing on your own. So I spent a lot of money on trying to push an album out there and work with these people that are supposed to get you to the next level. And really, they just sort of took advantage of me. And it was the most expensive lesson I'll ever have, paid for. But at the same time, I look back on it now, I'm like, well, I needed to learn that lesson no matter how expensive it was, because it let me know that, like, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to me and what I do. Nobody will care as much as I do, in getting my music out there.
So part of the music industry, probably a large part of it for you, I would imagine, would be the live performances. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you've done recently? In other words, obviously the pandemic happens. Mm-hmm. Concerts, tours, they just stop. Were you at the point in your career where you were still doing those actively when that happened? Or had you already, at that point, stopped doing as much of the touring as you'd done earlier when you were talking, you and your wife driving around the country together? And I just wonder how different it would be now if you were still out there.
So I toured for, the better part of a decade, driving myself to shows with, my wife and I were living out of the van. And it was very exhausting. By the time we had our firstborn, it's kind of like, well, let's take some time off and be parents. And I'll fly out to do shows, here and there. So I hadn't really been doing touring for a while.
I didn't think so,
but I had started playing elementary schools with my children's music.
I just think
stuff.
that's the coolest thing, man.
It's the most awesome experience because I've got a YouTube channel. So I should mention my children's music project is called the Juicebox Jukebox.
Okay.
And there's a YouTube channel for it. I recorded 14 songs for it. I made videos for it. It's an all-encompassing expression, I think, of my artist creativity, where I made the videos, I wrote the songs, my family's involved, my kids' voice is a very family, focused project.
And that's the Juicebox Jukebox.
The Juicebox Jukebox.
Love it.
And I had just started doing more elementary school shows. There's a lot of, I had started having a lot of teachers discover this music and playing it for their classrooms. I got on the Texas Artist Touring roster. I can't remember what it's called. So anyway, I'm supposed to be doing these shows at elementary schools. The pandemic happens. I've got to cancel all the elementary school shows. Just now, actually, this week, we'll be doing them again for the first time, going up to kind of Upper West Texas, doing some elementary school shows with these songs, kind of making up for that. And it'll be fun.
Very cool.
And it's crazy because I'll be doing these elementary school shows, and then I'm heading to Austin to do a rally in front of the Capitol. So I've got this split personality of things. But I have thought lately, I would like to get back there out on the road again and play some more grown-up shows, because I think that people are kind of itching to get out there and experience, live entertainment again, for sure.
Who are some of your favorite artists to listen to? Mm-hmm. You being an artist yourself. And who is someone that you would love to play with if you were ever given the chance that you haven't yet had that opportunity?
Yeah.
Like your pipe dream, if you want to call it,
pipe dream.
Yeah.
I'd have
But I don't want to sell you short.
No,
I'm saying,
yeah.
do you ever think, man, I would, okay, let me just throw this out there. One day, it'd be pretty awesome just to play the tambourine on stage with you two or the Connells. There, I said it.
Right.
So how about you? What's your...
Yeah, I think I would default probably to getting to do something on stage with Paul McCartney, just because he's been the longest lasting influence of my entire life. Since I was a kid, I had every single Paul McCartney album. Once I collected all the Beatles stuff, it was Paul McCartney.
Then it was on the...
Yeah, then it was what's solo stuff and Wings, and I got completely absorbed in Paul McCartney forever. And I've seen him live, and it's just one of those things where he's probably an artist where you just sort of, for me, if I could just shake his hand and say, hey, thanks, you've heard it from everybody else. But I would like to know that I got to, do something like that. That would be an incredible accomplishment. It would be cool to do something like that with Eric Clapton. Anybody who was like a legendary, still a living legend. I think that would be an incredible thing to do. My influences are kind of all those guys. You kind of hope that, I think every musician or songwriter hopes, whether they project it loudly or not, they would like their legacy to fall in line with those people that influenced them. It's a big dream, to hope that one day you're labeled as, a Paul McCartney or a Bob Dylan or, somebody like that. But you sort of hope for that. Otherwise, why are you doing it? You want the most people to hear your music. But my influences were those people for sure.
Okay. So you've...
Billy Joel's another one.
Billy Joel, yeah, that's a good one. Every artist that you've mentioned in the course of this conversation, I've recognized. Is there an artist that the last time, what's the last time you picked up Apple Music or Spotify, where people can find your music, by the way, under 5 times August. Mm-hmm. But when's the last time you had this moment where you're like, oh, I don't recognize this artist, but boy, this is really good. Who's somebody that maybe we haven't heard of that you've been enjoying lately? Anybody come to mind?
It's usually artists that have been around that I just never discovered. So they're new to me. Mm-hmm. There's a band called Deacon Blue. Huh. I can't remember where they're from. I feel like they're they're across the pond a bit. I tend to look for bands that have a core songwriter. Ricky Ross of Deacon Blue was somebody that I discovered the last couple years, and then I got into they've been around since the 80s, but I had missed them, over the course of my childhood. And Deacon Blues, great. Delamitri was a band that I listened to growing up. That, they're kind of like a one-hit wonder in the States, but they, Justin Curry is an incredible songwriter.
So there's more to them than Roll to Me?
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
I mean, great music. I love bands with a songwriter in it, where like they've never written a bad song. There's no filler on the album. It's just it's good music. So those are a couple. I'm trying to think if there's anybody newer that I'm like, oh, they're pretty good, but I think I kind of stopped looking after a while. Okay. My favorite guys, modern guys, David Gray is another one. He's still pumping out great music.
Babylon. Just such a great song.
Because what happens with me is I'll take one song, and if it feels like there's a songwriter behind it, I'll be like, what else did they write? Right. And then I find out what else. Most people, they hear the song on the radio and that's all they need. They don't really, I like that one hit by that artist. I, as a musician, as a songwriter, I'm like, well, what else did they write? So I love to dive deep into catalogs of songwriters and bands like that.
Totally understandable. All righty. Got your phone with you over there?
I do.
Okay. What's currently in your Amazon cart, if you would like to share?
In my Amazon cart, we've got most likely kids' school supplies, a digital kitchen scale. That's from my wife.
Nice.
We've got a massage gun.
A massage gun.
It's a $200 massage gun.
I almost bought one of those over at the mall kiosk. So I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm with you.
We've got some school books.
Okay.
And looks like more school books.
Okay, yeah.
Oh my!
Oh no!
I'm not going to read that.
I'm about to say you don't have to read everything in there. Okay, Brad.
I'm fascinated now because I'm like, what did Kelly put in the Amazon book? Or in our Amazon list? Yeah, it's funny. What I do is if I need something, I buy it and then it comes. But Kelly will load up the Amazon list and then I'll check out and be like, there's like a $500 generator in our cart. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Thinking about the apocalypse, getting ready for the apocalypse. I got it.
You can't go wrong with a power generator. Absolutely.
No, you got to have one.
Especially after what we went through in February in this area.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so if anyone wants to look for you, they need to look for 5 Times August on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You're on Getter.
I'm on Getter. I'm on all of them.
Gab, Locals. I mean, you're all over the place.
Yeah.
5 Times August. Spell it out,
FIVE. Yeah. TIMES. August.
Yep. You got it. Let's see. And your music is on Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon under the same name. That's very convenient that you went and grabbed 5 Times August everywhere.
Yeah. One of a kind.
One of a kind. Anything we've failed to cover here today, or are we good, man?
I don't think so. I think that's it. That's, appreciate it.
Yeah, man. It was a pleasure meeting you. And do check out not only your music, but your parody songs as well. You're a very talented guy, and I appreciate you making time for us today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming down, man.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed getting to know Brad and hearing his story as a guy in the music business. He's so talented, and I would highly recommend you go look up his stuff on YouTube, other platforms under 5 Times August, or just head to his website, 5timesaugust.com. Hey, I want to give a big thank you to the At the Mic Show listeners, Renee Ozier, Sue Mariani, and Tyler Morgan, all winners in our first At the Mic Show giveaway. They each won an item of their choice from atthemicshop.com. We have a store over there, atthemicshop.com. They were the first to respond to a little contest we had a few episodes back. You can take a look at what show merchandise is available right now, just in time for the giving season that's fast arriving. That's atthemicshop.com. Hoping that by the time this podcast posts, we will have winter caps available. That is the plan, atthemicshop.com. And as always, if you're able to provide a nice review and a 5-star rating over on Apple iTunes, we would be so grateful. Your high ratings and your kind remarks, that's how other folks find the show. You can feel free to share it directly if you'd like with your family and friends at themicshow.com. It's that simple. All the episodes are right there. Next week, you and I are going to sit down with national radio host Andrew Wilkow. That'll be fun as we get to know about his background. That's our next episode of At the Mic. And until that next time, when we sit down together, please go be free, and thank you for listening.
This has been At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production. Head to atthemicshow.com for archived episodes, sponsor information, and ways to connect.
Hey, goblinshoecandlecompany.com. That is a website you need to go to right now. goblinshoecandlecompany.com. Check out their assortment of homemade candles with perfect aromas you need, filling every corner of your home just in time for the holiday season. There are more than 36 perfectly blended natural fragrances ready to fill your living space as we settle into fall and winter. Head to goblinshoecandlecompany.com. Find that perfect gift, not only for that special someone in your life, but for you as well. That's goblinshoecandlecompany.com.